Belknap, Move to Amend's National Director, coming to you live from Los Gatos, California, where I'm visiting tonight. As always, you can find us here normally on the last Wednesday of every month at 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on Facebook Live and on Twitter too. Move to Amend is the campaign to pass the We the People Amendment to the U.S. Constitution to make clear that corporations don't have constitutional rights and to get big money out of politics. Today, we have many exciting news and updates, so stay put, don't go anywhere, and make sure you share and retweet this live stream using the hashtag Move to Amend and hashtag Live Report for a chance to win a free t-shirt at the end of the report. We always give out prizes, and this month it's going to be our t-shirts. So at the end of the show, for folks who share this live feed with hashtag Move to Amend, on either Facebook or Twitter, we'll pick one person from each platform, and I'll announce 2 lucky winners at the end. Also, please feel free to ask me your questions anytime. I will answer them at the end. And if you're tuning in not live, we'll be sure to reply with a response ASAP. So just type your questions as you have them, and we'll circle back at the end or later if you're not listening to us live. So first up is corporate rule news. All right, so basically, new year, same old shtick. It seems like things with Iran have died down for now, thank God. But as the war drums were beginning to roll, the billionaires and some members of Congress were beginning to salivate. Yep, it turns out that when stock markets opened the morning after the missile strike ordered by President Trump that killed Iranian General Soleimani, dozens of members of Congress also saw bumps in their portfolios as their holdings in defense contractors like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon increased in value over the possibility of an upcoming war. Members of Congress investments in defense contractors may present more significant potential conflicts of interest than investments in other industries because the contractors rely heavily on defense spending that is approved by Congress for the revenue. So 18 members of Congress combined own as much as $760,000 worth of stock in Lockheed Martin, for example. In the Senate, nearly 1/3 of the members of the Defense Subcommittee of Appropriations own stocks in the top defense contractors, the subcommittee that's in charge of drafting the procurement section of the annual defense spending bill. So basically, these senators have access to the nation's wallet and can then write checks to the contractor companies where they own stocks, and then they get a piece of the pie. So it's really scary to think about these electeds representing us if their priority is their own pocketbooks over the best interests of the country, not to mention the people who sacrifice and their families who serve in the military. So we need to keep an eye on that. Again, hopefully the Iran situation has settled down, but that's always there, and obviously a giant conflict of interest. This month, as we all know, was Martin Luther King. Okay, I'm seeing something happening, but not really. Carrying on. Martin Luther King Jr. Day was that last week? I've kind of lost track of time here. I was traveling. As Martin Luther King said, guided missiles and misguided men. That's who we have in charge. 53 years ago in his speech, The Three Evils of Society, at what was to become the end of his life, King had begun to talk about not just racism, but poverty and militarism. War, he said, robs society of the funds to uplift the poor. It kills the working class people who fight it, and it employs the rhetoric of freedom to conceal mass death. This year, what was really resonating with us here at Move to Amend on Martin Luther King Jr. Day is the value that King placed on nonviolent direct action as a necessary tactic for systemic change. From his letter from Birmingham jail, King said in 1963, "You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path? You're exactly right in your call for negotiation. Indeed, that is the purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and establish such creative tension that a community that has consistently refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. It seeks to dramatize the issue so that it can no longer be ignored. So that's why this year we're stepping it up. We see civil disobedience in the same way that Dr. Martin Luther King did. January 21st, actions at congressional offices were just the beginning. I'll talk about that more in the report. But just want to acknowledge Dr. King and the importance of civil disobedience in our strategies for all our movements, and remember that that's a tactic that's been essential for success every single time. Let's see. Okay. It looks like we've got an issue with the Facebook, so hopefully folks will still find us. But I think everything's working on Twitter. So Alfonso, I don't know if you saw that chat, but making sure that we share this to the Move to Amend Facebook page so that folks who are tuned there can see it. All right, let's see. What else do we have going on in the news of corporate rule? The Trump administration is set to remove protections against water pollution. They're ready to move ahead with their plan to remove protections for some of the nation's millions of miles streams, and arroyos, completing one of the most far-reaching environmental rollbacks yet. The changes proposed by Trump in his first weeks in office, if implemented, will sharply scale back the government's interpretation of which waterways qualify for protection against pollution and development under the half-century-old Clean Water Act. Trump says that he is targeting federal rules and regulations that impose unnecessary burdens on businesses, but we know that what he means by that, he's putting his billionaire donors' interests and friends over the country's and the environment's best interests. These changes have been sought by industry, developers, and large corporate farmers, and opposed by environmental advocates and public health officials. So this is the same administration, of course, that's been eroding the Environmental Protection Agency and its regulatory power. So there is no question that he's set to move forward on that. An announcement on the final rule is expected soon, but we need to make sure to resist that when it happens to protect our waterways. And something that isn't new really, but it still enrages me every time it happens. If you're a billionaire, justice is more lenient on you than when you break the law. So a big story, pharmaceutical executive John Kapoor was sentenced to 66 months in prison over the opioid trial. The former billionaire and pharmaceutical executive John Kapoor has been sentenced to 5 years and 6 months in prison. His sentencing is the culmination of a many months long criminal trial in Boston's federal court that resulted in the first successful prosecution of pharmaceutical executives tied to the opioid epidemic. The 76-year-old is the founder of Insys Therapeutics, which made and aggressively marketed the potent opioid painkiller Subsys. Kapoor and 4 other executives were found guilty last year of orchestrating a criminal conspiracy to bribe doctors to prescribe the company's medication, including to patients who didn't need it. And then they lied to insurance companies to make sure that the costly oral fentanyl spray was covered. The painkiller, which was intended for cancer patients, could cost as much as $19,000 a month. 2 other executives pleaded guilty and became cooperating witnesses. Kapoor's 66-month prison term is substantially less than the 15-year sentence recommended by federal prosecutors, but it is a little bit more than the 1 year requested by Kapoor's defense attorneys, who said that they maintained his innocence, and then they also stressed that his old age was a reason for giving him a short prison sentence. So he had a really nice life screwing over everyone, and now we should go easy on him. The other executives received between 1 year and 33 months, significantly less than many of the prison terms that were also recommended for them. So although it's obviously good that finally there's some justice in the opioid conspiracy, he obviously deserves to go to jail, but he deserves way, way more than just 66 months. People who get sentenced to much longer for possession of, and in many cases, most of the time actually unharmful controlled substances. And meanwhile, he is, getting people addicted and ruining thousands of people's lives, potentially more than that if you're talking, counting the families of people impacted. And so he basically got to slap on the wrist. So a little bit of progress, like one tiny fourth of a step forward and 20 steps back or something like that, unfortunately. But here's some good news. In a historic shift, the second largest physicians group in the United States has endorsed Medicare for all. They said, quote, major changes are needed, declared the 159,000 member American College of Physicians. So major changes are needed to a system that costs too much, leaves too many people behind, and delivers too little. This is great because the only ones that really benefit under the current healthcare system are insurance corporations. Polling shows that most Americans want to see Medicare for all, a Medicare for all healthcare system. And with endorsements like these, we get a little bit closer to implementing this critical policy that so many Americans need for survival. And in other good news, a successful citizen-led ballot initiative to protect Lake Erie was defended by the community that passed it. They're in court right now because the Lake Erie Bill of Rights is being sued on the basis that it's too vague and far-reaching, and that it has, quote, the potential to drive some Northwest Ohio farmers out of business. So the community of Toledo filled the federal courtroom this week, filled to capacity when U.S. District Judge Zach Zowery heard arguments for 2 hours over whether Toledo's Lake Erie Bill of Rights is constitutional or not. The Lake Erie Bill of Rights is, quote, a social value statement passed 61% by 61% of Toledo voters, and it reaffirms the rights under the Ohio Constitution for clean drinking water. The bill, also known as LEBOR, Lake Erie Bill of Rights, allows for arbitrary enforcement of both criminal and civil laws. And supporters of the bill assert that Lake Erie has the right to exist, flourish, and evolve as an ecosystem, and that while Lake Erie has rights, corporations do not. The hearing got rowdy at times as citizens expressed their concern for their beloved lake. Lake Erie is not yours to take away, yelled one spectator. Legalized pollution is not a First Amendment right, yelled another. So a ruling is expected at a later date. We'll keep you posted, but hats off to the citizens of Toledo, including many Move to Amend volunteers who pushed for the Lake Erie Bill of Rights and who are making history here in the United States by protecting the ecosystem. All right. Let's see. You're listening to Move to Amend's monthly live report. I'm Caitlin Saposi-Belknap, Move to Amend's national director. Move to Amend is the campaign to pass the We the People Amendment to the U.S. Constitution to make clear that corporations don't have constitutional rights and to get big money out of politics. Ask me your questions at any point. I will answer them at the end. And don't forget that we will share with 2 different folks a t-shirt if you help us share this broadcast. So please retweet using the hashtag MoveToAmend and share from the Move to Amend Facebook page, and use the hashtag MoveToAmend, and we'll pick one person from each platform and we'll send you a t-shirt for helping spread the word. Next up is updates from the Move to Amend campaign. So last week I was in Washington, D.C. again. It looks like I'm going to be doing a lot more of that this week. This year. This week. I'm just going to keep going to Washington, D.C. No, I'm going to keep going to Washington, D.C. with some regularity this year. We're making some really good progress. So I met with 26 congressional offices that we hadn't talked to before to begin discussions on their offices signing on to the We the People Amendment. I'm happy to say that we've got 2 so far out of those conversations. I'll share with you who they are in a second. I also met with our staff contact in Pramila Jayapal's office. She's our lead on HJR 48. So we made plans for a legislative briefing that we'll do for congressional staff in a few months. And we discussed working together to target all of the members of the Progressive Caucus, which she's co-chair of. And those are all folks who should be signed on. So we're going to be working together to make sure we get everybody that we haven't already gotten. I also met with our Senate leads office, can't tell you publicly who that is yet, but we made plans to move the ball forward on recruiting additional Senate commitments as soon as the impeachment proceedings are finished. So we basically have from now until then to really put the pressure on our top targets in the Senate. So we have somebody who is willing to introduce the amendment in the Senate. We've been working on this for a number of years, but they would like to have 5 other senators join with them, and one of those folks on the Judiciary Committee, because that's the first committee that the amendment will go to. So we're working to get that coalition and put it together. So we have a list of senators that we're focusing on. Everybody should call their senator no matter who it is, but we have some top targets that we think are most likely because we've already been having conversations with them. And if you live in these states, it's a very important thing that we are asking for you to aggressively contact your senators. Aggressively meaning with regularity every week. So the states where those senators are California. We're targeting both of the 2 senators from California. Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse is one of our top targets. Hawaii, both of the senators from Hawaii. Let's see, Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin is a top target. Both of the senators from Washington State, Bernie Sanders from Vermont, Tina Smith in Minnesota, John Tester from Montana, Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts, Martin Heinrich in New Mexico, both of the senators from Oregon, Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden, Sherrod Brown in Ohio, Chris Van Hollen in Maryland, Cory Booker in New Jersey, both of senators from Illinois, and Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota. So actually that's both the senators in Minnesota, Jackie Rosen from Nevada. And so those are our top targets. And if you live in any of those states, again, California, Rhode Island, Hawaii, Wisconsin, Washington, Vermont, Minnesota, Montana, Massachusetts, New Mexico, Oregon, Ohio, Maryland, New Jersey, Illinois, Nevada. We need you to call your senators. Call them every day. Ask all your friends to do it. It makes a big difference. We're in the critical time right now where we're having conversations with these folks. We've kind of made the political arguments. We've made the legal arguments for the amendment. They have heard us out, but now they need to really know that their constituents will have their back if they step forward and do this. And so your calls could not be more important right now. If you're in a position to try and have a meeting to ask them to be a co-sponsor, then that would be great as well, and we'd be happy to help you get started on that. So right now, it's also important to publicize that pressure as you're doing it. So sharing our posts that we've been posting regularly on social media and using the hashtag #WeThePeopleAmendment to make sure that the word is getting out, and so that they also see see that publicly as well, because your calls are just one-on-one with a staff person, but it's important that you also let folks know that you're doing it. All right. Also, while I was in DC last week and the week before, I met with climate activists, anti-war activists, and independent media leaders from a number of different groups to build and solidify our connections with those organizations. So there'll be more to come on those fronts. And I also spoke at the United Against Corruption rally on the Capitol lawn on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, along with several other democracy protection organizations. So Alfonso can share the clip from that if you want to watch the video. So we're at 69 co-sponsors on the We the People amendment in the House. That's basically right where we want to be right now. Our goal is to get to 75 by the end of the year, more if we can do it. So our most recent Congress members to come on board were Anna Eshoo from California's 18th District, actually where I am right now, and Joe Neguse from Colorado's 2nd District just came on this week. And just in, I heard yesterday that Grace Napolitano, I haven't ever said that out loud, Napolitano from California as well is going to co-sign. So that will bring us to 70, which is really exciting. So keep those calls up. Also, as I said already, January 21st marked the 10-year anniversary of the Citizens United versus FEC's Supreme Court decision and the public launching of the Move to Amend campaign. So activists across the political spectrum in California, Ohio, Illinois, Minnesota, Montana, Florida, Washington, and New Mexico took action to resist corporate rule and target their Congress members. They did sit-ins, rallies, film screenings, presentations, and lobby visits. A couple quotes from folks who participated. Someone from the We the People Miami County, Ohio shared their experience. Both members and friends of the We the People Miami County had a friendly drop-in at Warren Davidson's Troy, Ohio office. We talked with this receptionist and left letters asking Representative Davidson to co-sponsor HJR 48. Then, with 3 people holding signs, we posed for a photo. And Lake Area, Minnesota Move to Amend said, Lakes Area Move to Amend activists gathered at Sage and Laurel in Brainerd on Tuesday night on the 10th anniversary of the Citizens United decision. 8th District candidate Quinn Nystrom and 2 state legislative candidates signed the pledge to support Move to Amend's amendment should they win their office. The corporation should not have the rights of natural persons and that money is not speech. Robin Monahan, a retired nurse from Shoreview, Minnesota, who trekked across the continental U.S. walking with his brother in 2010 in response to the Citizens United decision to protest it, was a guest speaker. All of the participants at these events reported feeling a sense of empowerment and satisfaction after making themselves heard. There were no arrestable actions at this time, but there definitely more escalation to come. We fully intend to escalate our tactics throughout the year and beyond, and if movement history has shown us anything, it's that direct action is what gets the goods. So if you support these kinds of actions and wish to see more of them, please consider making a contribution to Move to Amend to ensure that we have the funding to carry out more protests everywhere in the country. Stay tuned about future opportunities to participate in more civil disobedience actions. And in the meantime, keep calling your representative and your senators and tell them that it's high time they stand up for and fight for the people instead of corporate interests. So when you're calling your House rep, you want to say, please co-sponsor House Joint Resolution 48 since it's already been introduced. And in the Senate, say that if it is introduced in the Senate, which we know that it is likely to be very soon as we get those 6 or 5 more senators lined up, would you commit to co-sponsoring? That's what you're asking. A companion bill to House Joint Resolution 48. Or the We the People Amendment. But generally they know it by the numbers. So House Joint Resolution 48 in the House and a companion bill to House Joint Resolution 48 in the Senate. Also want to invite everyone to join the 28th Amendment Alliance. So we're trying to get more organized about our outreach to Congresspeople and to our friends and families and our networks. So this year marks the 10-year anniversary of the Citizens United versus FEC decision, as I've said a couple times. This is just 10 years too many. We have to kick it into high gear. We can't afford our environment, our democracy, if we even have one in any way at this point, our healthcare system, our whether we go to war, all of this depends on us getting this amendment passed ASAP. But for a lot of people, this decision was the first time that they had ever heard of corporate personhood, and didn't really understand that even before Citizens United, money was defined as free speech. And while there were limits that there are not now, there still was the ability for the wealthy to dominate the political process. But a Move to Amend, we've been working on this for a long time. Our founders had already been working on the issues of corporate constitutional rights for more than a decade, and we anticipated the importance of this case to awaken the public of the imminent threat of corporations, large corporations, having the same rights as human beings. So 10 years later, we're the only organization with a solution that goes further than just overturning Citizens United, but gets to the root of the problem, corporations having constitutional rights. But this is a big fight, and we can't go it alone. So what we're asking of everyone is to commit to joining the 28th Amendment Alliance. And this is a commitment to get at least 28 new people to sign the Move to Amend petition, which is pretty easy. That's basically just everyone you know. And the reality is that most people you know probably support this, even if they're conservatives or apolitical. Polling shows, our conversations show, our ballot initiatives show that this has cross-partisan support and is something that brings people together kind of the way no other issue does. So we are asking everyone to get 28 new members to sign our motion to amend. The motion to amend is used as an organizing tool, but then we also use that to, when we contact your representatives and your senators, to let them know how many of their constituents are calling on them to support the amendment. So it's important that we grow those numbers. We're also asking folks to commit to calling your senators and representatives on the 28th of every month. And if you sign up for the Amendment Alliance, then we'll remind you. And it's just a couple minute process that you can just do at any point in the day between 9 to 5 Eastern time. You can also call your district office as well if you want to be an overachiever, but calling the Washington, D.C. office at a minimum. And just doing that every month on the 28th so that they're getting at least one regular call monthly, and then becoming a Move to Amend sustainer at a monthly donation of your choosing. We suggest $28 a month. That's how much I give to Move to Amend, but whatever feels right for your budget will put you in the Amendment Alliance. So everyone who signs up for the Alliance will receive a starter kit, which will give you a Move to Amend t-shirt, button, postcards, and stickers. So we'll give you some prizes or gifts and thank yous for joining. You can sign up for the Amendment Alliance by following the link that Alfonso is going to share in the comments on this feed. And if you're not ready for the challenge, you can still support us by becoming a sustainer for whatever reason you are not in a position to make those calls and reach out to your community. But everyone can do that, and it's actually pretty easy and a significant way that you can help. Let's see, last couple things in terms of news from the Move to Amend campaign this month. I want to welcome our new interns. Our new interns just started last week, and we're really excited to be working with them. So Anne is actually a senior intern, so she's been with us in Eugene, Oregon, Bryce in Athens, Ohio, Moses in West Sacramento, California, Jenny in Pensacola, Florida, Kathy in Mendocino, California, John in Babylon, New York, and Rick in Burbank, California. So welcome and thank you to our awesome interns for joining our team. Our interns have really a lot of opportunity to plug in with the inner workings of Move to Amend. These are not folks who just get a coffee or make copies in any way, shape, or form. And we have interns of all ages and backgrounds and experience levels. And if you're interested in our internship program, we have 2 cycles in the year. So we just started for our spring interns, but you can check it out at movetoamend.org/internships if you'd like to learn more. And we're putting call out for corporate rule stories. If you have a corporate rule story that you'd like to share, please visit our website. Alfonso will share the exact link and submit it to us. You can either write it up yourself and we'll publish it to our website, or you can tell us an idea and we'll look into writing it for you if that's more your speed. We're also planning to record a series of short videos that go more in detail about how corporate personhood affects every single one of us. And so would love those corporate rule stories to help us emphasize through video as well. So looking for both. And if you've got video experience and you're interested in plugging in, there's also ways for you to do that through that effort as well. You can contact us through the Contact Us page on our website. And lastly, I want to invite everyone to our next webinar, which is almost always on the first Tuesday of every month. It's our Take Action webinar. So February's will be on February 4th, next Tuesday. And the topic is how to get your Congress member to support the We the People Amendment. So Alfonso will share the RSVP link, and there's no need to have any background or experience to join. If you're just curious to plug in with Move to Amend, that could be a really good way to just get started. Jessica and I will be leading that, and I look forward to seeing you all there. Again, that's February 4th, how to get your Congress member to support the We the People Amendment. So other things coming up in February, another trip to Washington, D.C. for me, then also stopping in Connecticut for the Rebellious Lawyering Conference at Yale, and on to New York City to work on solidifying our Move to Amend chapter there, and also doing some lobby meetings for some of the congressional folks who are in the New York City area. So stay tuned for details about all that. I'll report on that at the end of the month on the February report. You're listening to Move to Amend's monthly live report. I'm Caitlin Saposi Belknap, Move to Amend's national director. Move to Amend is the campaign to pass the We the People Amendment to the U.S. Constitution to make clear that corporations don't have constitutional rights and to get big money out of politics. You can ask me your questions at any point during this broadcast. I'd be happy to answer them at the end. And then don't forget that we're hoping you'll help us spread the word by sharing the link to this broadcast either on Facebook or Twitter using the hashtag #MoveToAmend, and we'll pick 2 folks, one from each platform, to share with you a t-shirt, and thanks for your helping spread the word for us. So next up is our dispatch from the grassroots. Shout out to our folks in Chicagoland, Illinois, Move to Amend, for their recent film screening of Move to Amend's mini documentary, Legalized Democracy, which earned them a spot in their local media publication. oakpark.com is where you can find that. After a long break, our local leaders in the area are eager to get started with building momentum in Northwest Chicago and beyond. If you live in Chicago, stay tuned for more opportunities to engage with them. Big thanks to Montanans Move to Amend for continuing to grow their state coalition in the Great Falls area. Shout out to David Saslav for his recent letter to the editor, op-ed, published in the Great Falls Tribune, highlighting Move to Amend's progress in Montana and across the country. They've also been very successful securing pledges from Montana candidates and elected officials in support of the We the People Amendment, including their at-large Congressman Tom Winter. Congressman Winter still needs to hear from constituents to sign on to our amendment, however, so definitely contact his DC and district offices if you live in Montana and let him know you want him to support HJR 48. If you have friends in Montana, you can spread the word to them too. Congratulations to Alaska Move to Amend as they celebrate their latest victory this month. The Kenai Peninsula Borough joined other Alaskan cities in Anchorage, Sitka, and Homer in passing a Move to Amend resolution supporting the We the People Amendment. Our grassroots leaders in Alaska are hard at work building a state coalition powerful enough to pressure the Alaskan legislature to join 20 other states calling for a constitutional amendment. And we're very proud of their continued outreach to Native village councils across the state. Keep up the awesome work, Alaska Move to Amend. Shout out to folks in Jefferson County, Washington, Move to Amend, who participated in the 20th anniversary of the WTO protests in Seattle, Washington. Actually, the WTO protest, I wasn't there. I was in college at the time, and that was sort of my entry point into activism and learning about what was happening there, and then participating in April. That was in November 1999. April 2000 in the IMF World Bank protest was like my first big protest. So I have a warm, fuzzy spot in my heart for Seattle and the WTO protests being commemorated. So shout out to Jefferson County Move to Amend for making the connections, because really a lot of the work that we're doing right now today against corporate constitutional rights and unchecked corporate power started with the global justice movement in the late 90s, early 2000s. Great job to our grassroots leaders in Rhode Island Move to Amend, who met with their Senator Sheldon Whitehouse this month. Whitehouse has been a top target for potential Senate co-sponsorship for the We the People Amendment, and the pressure is only building as half of Rhode Island's congressional delegation has co-sponsored HJR 48. If you're living in Rhode Island, please connect with Rhode Island Move to Amend, and also contact Senator Whitehouse and ask him to work with Move to Amend to bring the We the People Amendment into the Senate this year. Big thanks to St. Paul area, Minnesota Move to Amend for securing pledges from a majority of St. Paul City Council members. 5 out of 7 council members are now on record in support of the We the People Amendment, 2 of whom voted in favor of a past Move to Amend resolution that was before their city council. Shout out to our Oregon folks with Move to Amend Portland, Oregon for their great year-end organizer appreciation party. They invited several local groups to celebrate the tremendous movement building happening in Portland with an excellent turnout among Move to Amend supporters in the area. They'll be hard at work in 2020, pressuring their senators, Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden, to sign on to the We the People Amendment when it's introduced in the Senate. If you're a constituent, basically, if you live in Oregon, definitely call their offices as much as possible and tell them you wanted them to support the We the People Amendment. It's in particular Senator Merkley, who has committed to support in the past and now is being much more ambivalent. We need to hold his feet to the fire and not let him get squirm his way out of what he said he would already do. So make sure if you're in Oregon, you put the pressure on, especially Senator Merkley, but Wyden as well. Shout out to folks in Greater Dayton, Ohio, Move to Amend, who turned out for their local Martin Luther King Day March before hosting a presentation commemorating the 10th anniversary of Citizens United. Few communities have spent as much time on the front lines of struggle against corporate rule than communities of color, and we're proud of our Dayton leaders for consistently moving in solidarity with the movement for Black lives. Keep up the fantastic work in Dayton. And shout out to the whole Ohio Move to Amend State Network as they plan for their 8th annual statewide gathering happening this spring. This will be a great opportunity for Ohio supporters and organizational allies to connect with Move to Amend's grassroots leaders and national leaders and learn how we can all organize in solidarity towards real democracy in Ohio and beyond. If you're living in Ohio, stay tuned for details. Also, even more update, I got a report today. Several folks from the Ohio Network also met with the staff from Sherrod Brown's office and made a good case for why he should also co-sponsor the We the People Amendment when it's introduced in the Senate. So you can back them up by calling his office if you live in Ohio. That's it on campaign updates, but I'm here to answer any questions you might have. And don't forget to stay tuned to the end to see if you're one of our t-shirt winners. You can still keep sharing those links if you are just joining us. So does anybody have any questions? For me, let me look through the chat and see if there are any that have come in so far. What is corporate personhood? And you're saying there's something wrong with the Constitution from Amy from Twitter. So what is corporate personhood? Corporate personhood, or more accurately, it's corporate constitutional rights. It's the idea that corporations should have rights. So initially under the Constitution. So initially, the first way, so all of the rights that corporations are able to enjoy have come through the judiciary. There's nothing about corporations in the Constitution at all. There's no mention of corporations. So they don't actually, properly understood, they shouldn't have constitutional rights. The Constitution doesn't actually grant corporations constitutional rights. Constitutional rights are for human beings, and you can maybe make an argument that constitutional rights should also apply to nature. That's kind of a different conversation, but certainly human beings. And it was in the late 1800s, during the robber baron era, and a tremendous amount of graft and corruption and rise of corporate power through the railroad industry, that corporations were first able to get into the Constitution through the Supreme Court. So basically, as the 13th Amendment ended slavery, and the 14th Amendment was passed to try and head off southern states instituting segregation and Jim Crow. 14th Amendment says no state can deny anyone equal protection of the law. And there were numerous laws that treated corporations differently than people, because they are different than people, mostly around taxes, but also more accountability, because corporations have limited liability. So the owners of corporations are not personally responsible for what a corporation does. That's part of the definition of a corporation. So with that freedom and limitation on your liability, the idea is that then you're responsible to the government, which is what creates corporations. And there were any number of ways that corporations were held in tight control. Things like corporations couldn't own other corporations. Corporations couldn't contribute to the political process. The owners of corporations had to live in the state in which they were doing business. Things like that. And as these companies grew in their power and influence, they thought to try and do away with these limitations by making the argument that the 14th Amendment, which was passed in order to protect the rights of Black folks after slavery, should apply to them as well, because they were just groups of people. And initially, the courts did not agree with that, but over time they were able to, through largely the fact that most of the Supreme Court was made up of corporate executives from the railroad industry, change that and made the argument that yes, corporations should have constitutional rights, should have the 14th Amendment to start with. Incidentally, the court at the same time, more or less, also said that women do not have the 14th Amendment. So all of the laws that states had that denied women the right to vote, women said, well, obviously that's a violation of the 14th Amendment. It says that no state can deny anyone equal protection. Last time we checked, no person can be denied equal protection. Last time we checked, we're people. And the court said, no, you're not for the purposes of the law. And but corporations are. And so from that 14th Amendment argument, they've been able to expand to gain First Amendment rights. So that's where the money and politics piece comes, but they also are able to overturn labeling laws with the argument that it violates their First Amendment right not to speak. Corporations have also been able to claim Fourth Amendment rights to privacy in order to hide what they're doing from government and the public. They've been able to claim Fifth Amendment rights to overturn environmental regulations or to make the argument that the profits lost as a result of environmental regulations are takings by government and they should be paid back, which oftentimes then makes it impossible for local governments to actually meaningfully pass those regulations because they can't afford to pay back. And the 14th Amendment has also been used to overturn communities' attempts to protect their local economy and their local businesses by drawing distinctions between local businesses that are a benefit to the local economy versus multinational corporations, which suck money out of a local economy. But the courts have said, no, that's discrimination. You can't discriminate between one kind of corporate person or another. So all of that to say that this is not about a critique of the Constitution, although there are some critiques somebody can make. But since corporations are not in the Constitution at all, this is a critique of the judiciary that never had authority to grant corporations rights in the first place. And that's exactly when most of our amendments have been passed, has been in response to the judiciary overstepping its bounds and needing to clarify. So, for example, the 19th Amendment and making clear that, the right to vote cannot be abridged on the basis of sex. That was to overturn that Supreme Court case that I mentioned earlier that said that women actually don't have a constitutional right to vote, or that states can deny women the ability to vote based on the fact that they are women. And so a constitutional amendment was needed to put the judiciary or the Supreme Court back in its place. So that's what we need now, both for Citizens United, but also the cases that built up and made Citizens United possible in the first place. So I hope that answers your question, Amy. Let's see, we've got some other logistical stuff. Let's see, John from Twitter asks, I love what I'm hearing. How do I donate online and how can I include you in my will? All right, awesome. Well, you can go to movetoamend.org/donate to make a donation. And actually, if you kind of mouse over the donation page on Move to Amend's site, you can see planned giving, and there's a whole page on how you can put Move to Amend in your will. This is obviously a long-term campaign. We're not going to be able to get this amendment passed tomorrow as much as we need it, and we really appreciate folks. There have been a few people who have passed away and who have left Move to Amend gifts. Move to Amend is entirely funded by individual people. There's a few family foundations, but there's still people behind that. And for the most part, it's just regular folks. Our average donation is $40. We don't get large foundation money. We don't get obviously any corporate money or government money. And most rich people are not interested in giving us money either. So it's just regular everyday people all pooling together. And the very best way that you can support us, short of putting us in your will, is, or in the meantime, is with a monthly donation to support our work. Obviously, we'll also be happy to accept one-time donations too, but a monthly donation is really critical to help us meet our monthly regular costs and budget accordingly. So if you're in a position to do that, we'd really appreciate it. Looks like, again, the donation link is movetoamend.org/donate. And I think Alfonso will share that in both platforms as well. Hope so. Alfonso, are there any other questions? Or anybody, or speak now if you've got a question. Again, if you're listening to if you're not listening to this live, if you're watching this as a recording, you can also chat your questions, and somebody on our team will follow up and answer it for you as soon as we can. So at the end of every show, we share a hell yeah moment, something that excites us and inspires us that we want to leave for you. So we're going to share that, and then I'll come back on and tell you the winners for the t-shirts, and then we'll close out. Here's our Move to Amend Hell Yeah moment for January 2020.
This is Democracy Now! We end today's show in Oakland, California, where a months-long struggle between a group of unhoused moms occupying a vacant home and the real estate firm that owned it ended with an unexpected victory for the mothers earlier this week, an offer for them to purchase the property. The major win in the mothers' fight against homelessness and real estate speculation came just a week after Wedgwood Properties forcibly evicted the families known as Moms for Housing from the home they'd been occupying for more than 2 months. The house had been vacant for 2 years. Police, sheriff's deputies, and a tactical SWAT team with a military robot laid siege to the house to arrest and evict the mothers in the early hours of the morning. Well, one of the moms was live on Democracy Now! From a studio in Berkeley. The heavily militarized action sparked widespread outrage and condemnation and left the mothers and their families homeless once again. But on Monday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, under growing public pressure, Wedgwood announced it would sell the property at a fair price through the Oakland Community Land Trust. The moms will then be able to purchase the house through the trust. This is Carol Fife, director of the Oakland office for Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, celebrating the news.
It's important to understand the history of civil disobedience in this country, because every single right that we have today was won by people engaging and pushing on what was legal, right? So it's important to not criminalize women who are trying to bring attention and justice and humanity to the masses for everyone. They are not the criminals here. The criminal system is one that allows homelessness.
You're up.
Oh, sorry. I missed that. Okay, so the winners for the t-shirt, it looks like everything got messed up on Facebook this time. Is that right, Alfonso? We didn't really, people couldn't share because it was only posted to my page. Sorry, folks, about that. So looks like our winner for Twitter is Bob Varisco. And if you send us a DM with your address and the shirt size that you would like, we will send you a shirt. Thanks for spreading the word, and thanks to everybody who helped us with that. Again, I want to remind everybody that Move to Amend needs your help to get this done. So please consider joining our Amendment Alliance. 28 supporters, people that you know that you bring to the cause, calling your Congress members on the 28th of every month, and we'll remind you when you sign up, and then making a monthly donation to support Move to Amend in any amount, although we ask that you consider $28 or more to support the 28th Amendment. So I hope everyone will tune in and join us and be part of this campaign and movement if you're not already. Thanks to all of you who are already doing the work day in and day out. And you can tune in and join me next month, February 26th. It's always the last Wednesday of every month, unless we switch it. But next month it'll be February 26th, same time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 Eastern. So thanks so much to Jason and Alfonso for your help. Sorry about the technical difficulties to all of you on Facebook this time. We'll be putting the recording up shortly on on the Facebook page if you if you missed any part of this because you got to us late. So you can tune in to that pretty soon. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great night, and we'll catch you next month on February 26th. Bye.
Corporations are not people too. Money is not speech. Men, in fact, it's the root of all right. Now we have the right to be free. Corporations are not people too. Money is not speech. Men, in fact, it's the root of all right. Now, up and defend your democracy. Have you reasoned recently read the Constitution. There seems to be some type of confusion. I thought it said the people were the institution and not the corporations that simply want to use them. The truth is currently a fusion of corporate loot and our government that is outright abusive. People need change. The state, it refuses. They're saying we're mistaken. Well, show us where the proof is. They control the media, movies, and the music, and determine where supplies of the water and food live. We need a strategy. Here is a solution. Build a movement to give our rulers improvements.